Hey, creative. Are you ready to discuss profits, the money, the ways to make it happen? The Profitable Creative Podcast is for you, the creative, how you define it. Videographers, photographers, entrepreneurs, marketing agencies, you get it. CEO of Core Group and author Christian Brim interviews industry experts, creative entrepreneurs, and professionals alike who strive to be creative and make money at the same time. Sound like you? Tune in now. It's time for profit.
Welcome to another episode of The Profitable Creative, the only place on the interwebs where you will learn how to turn your passion into profit. I am your host, Christian Brim. Special shout out to our one listener in Springfield, Massachusetts. Only been to Boston. I don't think it's far, but I haven't been to Springfield. But thank you for listening. Joining me today is Gabe Marusca of Authority in the Wild podcast. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Christian, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I've been a guest on your show, but tell our listeners what Authority in the Wild is about.
Sure. So it's a podcast that started as a creative experiment, if you want, driven by curiosity and so on, of learning and trying new things. And it turned out to be a very profitable one, a profitable creative process that now acts as my main source of clients. And it's a podcast, interview style podcast like this one, where I interview authority figures like you to gather insights for those watching and listening that can apply right away in their own business and life.
I love it. So it was a creative. What sparked the creative idea of doing a podcast?
So it was quite random. I was being part of a coaching, individual coaching program to be able to record on camera because I was quite shy and quite introverted, let's say, and I wasn't able to literally sit in front of a camera and start recording. So I was going through this coaching program, and while doing so, I was still having these moments like turning on the camera and like, what I'm doing here. And back then I was in Thailand. For those that are listening, I'm also a digital nomad, and I was in Thailand just meeting a group of people to do a hike. And one of the individuals was a young guy from Czech Republic that was vlogging in the moments, very and he seemed also very creative, like the way he hold the camera, the way he speak and so on. I was like, wow, he seems so young and he's so confident and so on. And after talking to him, I realized that he was his way of breaking this, if you want, social anxiety that he was going through, and was like challenging him to record every single day. And that was quite inspiring. And after that conversation with him, he invited me to host a live video session on Instagram. I was like, me live? Oh, no way. And eventually I say yes, because he was like, I don't have a lot of followers. No one will watch probably. And let's just do it.
Nobody's going to see this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that live recording turned out to be so full of energy for myself. Like I enjoyed so much that I told myself, I see myself doing this all the time. And long story short, after that, I was like, how can I put this into practice? And I'm like, maybe podcasting, video podcasting and so on. And and I started learning everything I could because it was like middle of December and I wanted to start in the beginning of the year, next year. Everything I could in 2 weeks about podcasting, invited some people, and one of them is the one and only Chris Do. And when he said yes, without me actually having a strong online presence or a podcast launch already, I was like, if Chris said yes, like everyone can say yes.
Okay, pause.
I will just do it.
I have been on a quest for the last 2 weeks to find a connection to Chris to get him on this show. So now I'm going to ask, can you make an introduction to Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Of course,
Okay.
he has the last say for that, but he's a very down to earth individual and such a cool guy that when he said
Well,
that, I
that's
was
why
like,
I
wow.
want him on the show, because everything that I see that he puts out there really resonates with me and what I'm doing here at the Profitable Creative and what we're doing for creatives. I'm like, I've got to get him on the show, but he's got a lot of gatekeepers. So if you can put me in touch, that'd be awesome. Wow,
We
yeah,
love to.
universe manifests things. So, why did you choose the name Authority in the Wild? Like what, and the topic? What went into that?
Actually, I didn't start it like that. Like the original name of the show was the Nomad Solopreneur because I was
Hmm.
both a solopreneur and nomad, and slowly, I was like, I don't see myself being a nomad for my entire life, and actually, now I'm in the process of settling down, and I was like, maybe I should rebrand the podcast as well because I'm not truly a solopreneur anymore either because I have like a small team of contractors that I work with. My wife is part of the business. So I'm not truly a solopreneur anymore. And I thought how I can find a name that's not just unique, but to kind of tell what's there, right? Like, and since I already start interviewing not just nomads and solopreneurs like I was doing at the beginning, with some exception like special guests like Chris was, I was like, all right, so right now I'm currently interviewing a lot of authority figures, experts in their fields, and so on. And I host raw conversation, unscripted, and so on. So I was like, I love as well nature and how can I mix all these things together? And that's how I led to this name of Authority in the Wild, basically capturing the wisdom and insights of these authority figures as raw as possible in their
Mm-hmm.
own habitat, if you want.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me. I don't remember. You may not be old enough. There was a show when I was a kid, and Sunday nights there was the World of Walt Disney. There was a hour long show, and then it was Mutual of Omaha sponsored it, and it was a wildlife show,
Mhm.
and that is what just came to my mind because it's the you know in the natural habitat. I love that. I love that. Um, Okay, but the podcast you said was accidentally profitable. So that's not what your main gig is, correct?
Correct. I run a consulting business, and the podcast it's kind of the main source of leads currently. And it, as I mentioned, like it was kind of accidental because some of the guests like sharing what I do, they got interested and we chat, and then they become the clients or listeners that just connected with me. They turn out clients at some point in the process, and yeah, the main thing that I do, it's a consulting business where I enter as a, uh, if you want, fractional executive in businesses, and I help them implement three systems: the acquisition system, client acquisition system, client retention, and operation side of things. So I plug into their own business and either bring my own team of contractors or working with their team in order to basically implement the three main pillars of a business to be profitable.
And what types of businesses do you work best with?
Mostly individuals that founder-based businesses that are willing to be authorities in their space, meaning that they are willing to build personal brands and so on. And most of them are experts that spend a lot of times in the corporate world, and they want to escape that to build their own thing, and they start the process, they start applying what they learn and so on, but because they can see only from the lens of the corporate person, they don't have the skills or sometimes the resources to build those three pillars that I mentioned. So, and they are part of many industries, like I work from uh, yoga coaches, for example, to creative professionals that do service-based businesses, to as well even product-based small businesses.
And so you're working with them when they're just starting out or fairly new. Is that
It's a mix. So most of
okay?
them are they have few years in the industry. Like they
Okay.
left corporate 4 or 5 years ago. They already have some results with their clients, but they are mostly trapped into the feast and famine cycle. They are chasing clients, implementing, chasing clients, implementing for their clients, rather than building systems and so on. And I have a favorite quote from James Clear, which is, "Goals are good, for setting direction, but systems are best for making progress." And they don't have those systems. So
Hmm.
that's when I come in. And some of them are just new from the corporate world. They put some money on the side. They are ready to build the business the right way from the start, but that those are kind of minority from those that I work with. Most of them, they have already a small track record with clients outside corporate.
Yeah, my experience with creative entrepreneurs is they resist processes because I think they find them restrictive, maybe. But I've had several guests on here that have essentially said the same thing, which is um, if you don't have processes, you actually are less creative. Like the processes give you the space and the predictability to be creative. What would you say to that?
I just can't say I love it, because indeed that's the thing, right? Because if you are trapped in quote unquote creativity mode, in which you just build for your clients and you have these creative processes in which you just sit and brainstorm and so on, can feel intuitively good, but then you end up in the position in which you're like, oh my God, where my next client is coming from. And
Hmm.
then you start doing that thing that you don't truly enjoy, which is like knocking on doors, phone calling, cold emailing, whatever you're doing for lead generation. And you don't have any sort of control or predictability. And I was in that situation, and I wanted control over my own time, to have that space for creative thinking, to have that space and predictability, that I know that if, I don't know, this project ends, I know that another one comes in because I have a waiting list. So that's kind of what I'll say to that is, often we think like, if we just are full mode into creative, even if, let's say you're a web designer or a videographer and you're there playing with your favorite tools and so on, but the day ends and you realize like, wait a second, I have done nothing today when it comes to lead generation, or I didn't document my process in order to build actual standard operating procedure, or something that I can fall back to when I do it on my own, or when I need help, because that's another struggle as you know, like most creative people face, in which they don't have a clear process to execute things. They just act on that creativity juice that is not always flowing, like, wait a second, what was this next step here in order to do that?
Yeah, and I don't think it's just creatives because I can think back at the beginning of my business. Now I had purchased a franchise, so there were processes that were built in the franchise model, but not everything had a process. And I think even if it's just yourself and you don't have contractors, the process gives you the structure to get predictable results, and that's, I think, key if you're going to have a business. Like otherwise, like you said, you end up reinventing the wheel multiple times, and it's like you don't have to do that. But if you're going to go beyond yourself and involve someone else, be it an employee or a contractor, you absolutely have to have processes or you can't hand it off. Um, One of the things I see, and I'll get your opinion on this. I see a lot of creatives that are project work driven, And I think that's kind of, the nature of the expectation of the customers, like their clients, that they want to hire them for a specific project. You mentioned websites, so like I have a website I want built, so I'm going to hire you to do it. Um, I see a resistance to productizing their service. Like, rather than be a custom scope of work for each project, finding a problem that you can solve that you can repeat and standardize. 80% of it is the same, and only 20% of it is custom. What's your experience with that?
It's funny that you ask that because not sure if you know, but I was a web designer and I had the same resistance. I was like, how can I will be able to serve clients best if I don't know, function on a standard step-by-step process.
Mm-hmm.
But after years of like struggling with that, I realized, wait a second, but I actually repeat kind of the same process in order to drive consistent results through their websites. And the thing is that creativity, it's still, and you can still build unique websites even if you productize. Because if you think about it, like what are the steps, right? Like you learn about their business, you have an intake form probably in which you gather as much information as possible from them. And then you follow a certain process like your wireframing, your creating the first iteration, and so on. Because people, when they think productization, they assume they're like, oh, wait a second, I'll get a templatized style website, or I will get something that is not uniquely mine, and so on. But that doesn't have to be the case. You still have the freedom to create a unique website, even if it's based on a certain standard wireframe that you know that works best for a certain industry. For example, I have that type of service. Like around 10% of my business, I still do websites and focusing on speakers and thought leaders. And it's kind of the standard in the industry. There is a certain section that every single landing page needs to have, or certain pages and so on. So when people think about creative process, implying creative process in productization, I'll suggest to like leave creativity aside for a second. Think creatively about how to create those steps and where to insert flexibility. Because if it's a, let's say, you create websites and you want flexibility for both you and your clients, and you can have 3 pricing tiers. One, for example, a templatized style website, one for a custom based website, and one for like, I don't know, you give them your entire time and so on, maybe like plug into their own business, but that's the higher tier one. And you can use price anchoring to sell the one that you actually want to sell, probably, which is the middle one. And yeah, it's in theory it's simple. In practice, you need to do it, like, because it's one thing to say like, all right, I will just follow this process and I'll succeed. You need to try. You need to go and try with one client, improve at the next one, improve at the next one, improve at the next one, and you'll end up with a process that it's successful because it's tested with multiple clients, and then you can like confidently charge more and in the same time deliver fast and actually get predictable results for both you and your client.
Yeah, and even in your example of the website, the structure gives you the space for the creativity, in the sense that, like, if you know that, and you pick speakers, that 80%, 90% of all speaker websites have these components, right? If you process and standardize that and productize it to sell, that gives you, all right, now what do you want it to be different? How do you want it to be creatively unique? You don't have to worry about that other 80%. You can focus on the 20%. Whereas if you don't have the process and you don't have the productization, then you're reinventing the wheel every time.
Exactly. And imagine if you're a creative listener, right, like, and you're building a website, imagine that if you allocate a certain amount of hours on the things that you know exactly how much time it will take, because you have those steps and you know that like getting information from clients is getting you this amount of time. Creating the wireframe based on the structure that you have is this, and you arrive at the space like allocating a flexible amount of hours for the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that you have like a ceiling if you want. You cannot go past that. And if you go past that, it's like a question mark for yourself. Like, should you be flexible in the future? Should you charge more? Because in theory, it's taking longer than you predicted. And that's why if you rewind a bit back and you think about the thing that I said, that you need to test this, because at the beginning, you won't be able to tell like the creative process is taking this amount, getting the wireframe done is this amount, implementing that into the system that you
Right.
probably use, and so on. So testing is, I think, the best way to identify these times.
So let me circle back then to the question. So how did you overcome the resistance of productization? What allowed you to move past that self-limiting belief?
My body, because it gave up. Like, I overworked myself. I wasn't able to serve all the leads that come in, and I was bad at saying yes. Saying no, and I was saying yes to everyone, and end up with burning out. And that time allowed me to rethink everything and to literally find ways to get out of that. And the if you want, the quote unquote annoying thing, that I knew the solution for a long time, but I was resistant to that. And when the life strike, I was like, okay, I need to do something, because I cannot continue like this. I cannot like put my health in this situation. And and that comes because if you're a creative, you resonate probably the fact that that is one of the struggle. The other is like hiring help because you think you are the best at what you do. Surprise, surprise, you're not. No one is the best.
Right.
And like all those things that I was struggling before burning out, after that, I was like, I need to actually leave my limiting beliefs and leave my ego aside and start asking for help, start implementing systems, start documenting better, and apply that documentation to building processes. And one thing, as you know, leads to another. And that led as well into consulting, because I was seeing that a lot of people struggle with this, because it's not in our nature to, from the beginning, to start writing down every single step that we do.
No, it's not. There are shortcuts if we'll accept the help, right?
Yeah.
I bought a franchise. That was a shortcut. I think I was at my mastermind last week, and one of my colleagues has a AdWords agency, and which is kind of surprising to me. I didn't know those still existed, but and he's exceptionally good at his craft. And this year he hired 2 people, and he had been about documenting the processes so that he could, get these people engaged. But his problem, what he presented with, was, I still feel like I'm still too involved, that I'm the bottleneck. Things keep coming through me, and I can't turn these things over because I can't explain thoroughly how I do things to someone else, that they can do it like I do it. And my experience share and advice to him was, well, it reminds me of a conversation I had with my daughter, who is a figurative oil painter. And when she first started out, she said she got exasperated with me when I was asking questions about how she's actually going to make money doing this. And she said, well, I don't know, Dad. I just want to paint what I want to paint. And I'm like, well, okay, you may or may not make a living doing that, right? But after she'd been in business for a couple of years, I asked her the question, okay, how would you compare yourself to, say, Andy Warhol, who was a creative that was uber successful in business, who involved others in what, he had a production line of, and her response was that to her, that diminished the creativity of it. And I'm like, okay, because to me, that's the distinction. You as a business owner have to decide, are you going to be the artist where only you can do it? Or are you going to accept that there's an alternative where other people involved in the process, and it's not just you, and you're much more successful financially as a business? Like, because that's where this guy was. Because to your point, yeah, you may be great and you may have a great process, but it's not like no one else can do it. And if they get 80% of the way that you do, and you have a standardized outcome, you have a expectation of quality, all of these things, is it okay if someone else does it differently than you? Right. And that is a hurdle most entrepreneurs get stuck at. Like they just get stuck there and they can't get over themselves. But to me, you just have to be real clear and understanding. Like, it's you that's limiting it. It's 100% you. And if you want to be the artist, you can be the artist. But just understand that you're limiting yourself.
100%, and couldn't agree more. I smiled because I was like, that was me. Like, I was like, all right, so why this individual that I just hired and I built this process for is not doing everything the way I said? But then if I remove that lens and looking from the perspective of a person that it's third party, it's not me, it's not the contractor and so on, I realize oh, wait a second, this work is actually pretty good. And if I look again at it, wait a second, it's actually better than the way I was doing it based on my process. And to your point, because it was 80% done the way I prepared the process, but the other 20% was their own individual creative process and the way of they think. And yeah, it shouldn't be perfect. That's another thing. Especially as creatives, we are driven by perfectionism. We are driven by the fact that we want to be spotless, whatever we are creating, even a business, even a process, even something that doesn't necessarily involve the classic creativity of art or something else. And that's not okay, because we're limiting ourselves, like you well said. And as entrepreneurs, as creatives, if you want to be profitable and if you don't want to end up in a position in which we don't have energy anymore to do anything else apart of work, that's not a nice place to be.
Mm-mm. No, you said your body shut down.
Exactly.
That you don't want to get to that point.
Hey creatives, Delana Ely here. I had a question for you. If you could pay yourself more, why aren't you doing it? For real. S Corp is an option for you, the creative entrepreneur, to move your business to the next level, to pay yourself more, and to cut your tax savings down. Yeah, less money to the IRS. We want that, right? So why haven't you done it yet? What's going on? The reality is you probably have 50,000 questions in your brain. You don't know which way is up and down, and you're still too busy to do all those things, plus also create, right? Well, the good thing for you is that Core Group is actually the place to be to get that S Corp election rolling. Yeah, we have an assessment. Let's see if you qualify. Come chat with me. Core Group, turning passion into profit.
You mentioned something earlier that piqued my interest, and I want to go down that rabbit hole. You used the term anchor pricing. I love talking about pricing because that's kind of my hobby. For the listeners, what does anchor pricing mean?
I'll try to use an analogy here. So it's coming from anchor, right? It's anchoring to something. So when someone sees, let's say, your pricing table, let's say they see the bigger price first, which is standing out, it's big, and so on. Let's say it's 10K for the purpose of this example. And then you have a price that's around 7K, or even better, like 6K, let's say. And you have another one that's 5. And if someone looks at those prices, they're like, oh, wait a second, that 10K seems so expensive. But the packages, when they look at them, like between the 5 and the 6 are quite similar. And even the bigger one has just some extras on top of the 6 one. Which one will you choose? Probably the 6 one, because it's almost similar to the other 2, but it's way better deal than the 5 because it includes more things, but less ideal than the 10 one that it's way less appealing due to the fact that it's almost double but doesn't include double. So that's how you anchor the idea into someone's mind that, all right, this is expensive and this is less expensive but offers more. And at the same time, when it comes to pricing discussion, like, for example, if you ask someone like about their budget, or if you say yourself the fact that, all right, so for what you're looking to get, we normally charge, let's say, 20K. And they'll remember that 20K. That's the anchor. But afterwards, you say like, we can do this and this from everything that you want. And you focus, of course, on the things that you want the most, but then you offer a way smaller price. They will see that as more affordable option because they have in mind the 20K. But for example, and here's the trap, like often I don't like to ask about the budget, because if you ask about the budget and they say, let's say if you offer the service for 15K, you anchor it at 20K initially, but you ask first about the budget and they say like, oh, we have around 8,000 to invest in this. Now imagine how hard it will be for you to almost double that.
Right.
Because that's the anchor.
They're anchored at 8.
Exactly. And kind of that's the principle around it. You want yourself to be in control, to anchor the price. And in the same time, to make sure that you deal with this conversation also ethically. Because, for example, let's say if someone from the get-go, they say their budget, you still help them if you want, but of course, in your own rules and conditions. Because let's say if you're normally charging double than that, you won't offer all those services or outcomes that you normally do for the half of the price. And also, here we can, I would love to discuss more about, if you want, like as well about, let's say, stage pricing or a way to still offer help, but maybe breaking the price in multiple installments rather than all price up front and so on. And that's another way to anchor it, because often you'll find this objection like, all right, but that's quite out of my budget. And you can use this approach in which you can split the pricing into multiple installments, and because you can anchor as well to the outcome they want. And in a way that, all right, so you want this outcome over this amount of time. And if we split the price in 3 installments, we work 3 months together. And by the end of the first month, you already see the experience of working together. You will see some sort of results. And here you make sure that you have some tangible results that you can offer in that amount of time. Because that for them will make it a bit of no-brainer to invest, because it's just, let's say, a third from the total investment, but they also experience it. And the point is to reduce it's a friction point, but to reduce the effort from them, and as well the commitment, if you want. Because everyone, it's like, all right, but I'll get return of my investment, because that's basically the biggest question that most of us have.
Yeah, my best example of anchor pricing that I have is movie theater popcorn, where you go in, they're small, medium, large, and I don't know how much it costs currently, but let's say the small is $5, and then the medium is like $6, and then the large is $6.50. Right. And so the anchor price of the $5 drives the value of the 2 above them. And it's like you don't ever intend to sell the small popcorn for $5. Like nobody buys that, and that's okay. So you're actually intentionally putting pricing out there on a product that you have no intention of selling, right?
Exactly.
It may sell, and that's fine if you do, but like logically, from the buyer's perspective, it doesn't make sense to pay $5 for a small when I can pay $6.50 and get a large, right? And that Rory, are you familiar with Rory Sutherland?
It sounds familiar.
He is an author. He wrote Alchemy. He's a director at Ogilvy there in the UK. And basically the whole book it's ostensibly around marketing, but how humans act completely irrationally. Like the idea that we're rational beings and make decisions rationally is a farce. And he goes through example after example of where an economist would say this should happen because this is rational behavior, but humans act entirely differently, right? And I find his work brilliant. But you mentioned the budget, and I thought immediately of a post that Chris Do did recently, where he said the client had come to him for a budget of $100,000, and they had quoted him like 115, 120, and the buyer, the client, was pissed. We told you that our budget was only 100,000. And Chris's response was, I understand, but my experience tells me that there are going to be changes to the scope of work during this time. And every time you do that, we got to go back and revisit the scope, and we got to negotiate pricing again. And it slows down the whole process. And so rather than do that, I put in a contingency. I know this is going to happen. And therefore, this speeds up the process. You're going to get what you want, and there's not going to be any of this back and forth. And after a minute, the client said, you're right, and paid the 120 or 115. I guess what I would take away from this, listeners, is that pricing is not rational. It's based upon human behavior, what they value. And to your point, like people that come in with ultra low budgets, they may not understand the value of what you're doing, right? I mean, that they may not understand the value to their own business of what you're doing. And so they've anchored their own price at some absurdly low number. And so you may have to do some educating to help them understand what impact your solution is actually going to give them. But don't, my overarching advice is don't underprice yourself. 90% of entrepreneurs leave money on the table because they're afraid, and they won't price aggressively enough. Any final thoughts on pricing, Gabe?
Yes, show them. Like I recently have a conversation on the podcast, An Authority in the Wild, with Anthony Pieri. And he shows in the consulting world, she's actually a consultant as well, and he shows the prices up front, above the fold. For those that don't know, is the first thing that you see on the website, which is kind of unheard. And the reason is like he's not losing time with those that cannot afford. It's automatically positioning as a premium provider. And in the same time, it's easy for someone to make decision. The sales process is easier, and so on. And to your point with education, you need to make the buyer understand already before they jump on a call with you what you're all about. Because trust now is built through this type of interactions like media content, podcast, YouTube, social media posts, and so on. And through that content, you have the power to educate them what the process looks like, who exactly you're working with, how the outcomes looks like after working with you, and so on. And when you get that information for free on all these platforms, when they jump on a call with you, you don't have to convince anyone because they know what you're all about, what service you provide, what are the results, and so on. Because if you're doing during the sales call, you do the hard work, and that's usually
Right.
like addressing objection and so on.
Yeah. Perry Marshall, author of 80/20 Marketing and Sales. I've been involved with his cohort for quite some time. And one of his tools is he's called it different things over the years, but its latest iteration is the Power Promise. And it follows a simple methodology. It's if then else, right? And if you qualify, like if this is your problem, so there's a distinction right there up front of like who you're serving, if this is your problem. And then the second if statement is what their skin in the game is. All right. So like you're going to follow our process, you're going to do XYZ, whatever it is, right? So there's two conditional statements. Then is the outcome that you deliver, right? And then the else is our skin in the game. And it's usually in terms of some type of guarantee or, what we'll do if we don't achieve the outcome. And if you go to my website, I have, christianbrim.com, I've got my consulting Power Promise right above the fold. And it's like, this is who I'm looking for. This is what I need from you. And if you and I work together, this is exactly what you're going to receive, or else I'm going to, give you your money back. Right. And so having that clarity in your messaging and in your pricing and in all of these things it smooths the sales process for sure, but it also is your marketing, because you're not going to attract someone that doesn't resonate with that. Like, well, that's not my problem, so I don't need Gabe or Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny about clarity is that it comes from shipping, trying things, not just from thinking about it. Because often we sit in front of a blank paper. It's like, let's find our unique selling proposition, or let's put together something that help us stand out. But if you don't have enough skin in the game to actually test things and ship to others, it's so hard to gain that clarity. At least that's what I found. What do you think about it?
Absolutely. I mean, the Power Promise is, so the USP, the unique selling proposition, that's the old way of thinking, and it's still valid. But the way Perry morphs it into a marketing tool that you actually put public facing, because the USP is usually an internal thing that like, this is how we're going to craft our messaging. This is, what drives it. But he just took it to its conclusion, which is, okay, this is what you're going to put out there. So.
Yeah, exactly. And you need both. And it's so easy after you deliver things, after you test, you get those insights, you see patterns, you see what people react to, because that's another thing. Like, you can actually test this messaging in your conversation with your prospects, and to see in your emails, in your DMs and so on, and see what actually drives interaction, how people behave. Because at the end of the day, you cannot predict until you test.
Nope. We're predictably unpredictable as humans.
Exactly.
Gabe, how do people find Authority in the Wild, or you to work with you? How do we find those things?
So if you search for my name, I am everywhere. Both my website, gabemarusca.com, LinkedIn, I'm quite active. Feel free to connect, send a message, tell me where you find me. And for those listening and watching until this point, I have a surprise as well for you. So I prepared a short gift that will be valid just for those that tune into this episode. So make sure to check the links down below.
Perfect. Listeners, will have those links in the show notes, if I could speak. If you like what you've heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you don't like what you've heard, shoot us a message and we'll replace Gabe. Until next time, ta-ta for now.